Hello, parents, and welcome to our virtual pediatric campfire chat, brought to you by Crystal Run Healthcare. As pediatricians and parents ourselves, we created this series to open a dialogue to provide education and answers on a variety of topics we know have been weighing on your minds throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Your Crystal Run pediatrician is a trusted advisor during these difficult times. So sit back, get cozy, and get ready to chat. Well, good afternoon, evening to all of our listeners out there, and thank you for joining us. We're back again here at Camp Crystal Run for our third week of chatting about topics important for kids and families during this time of coronavirus. I'm once again Dr. John Nasser. I have two pediatricians and colleagues of mine to introduce tonight, and I'll let them introduce themselves. First, Dr. Amy Spoto. Take it away, Amy.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Amy Spoto. I've been a pediatrician here at Crystal Run for about 9 years, but I've been practicing going on my 20th year now. I'm a proud mom to two girls, ages 3 and 10. So we've been trying to have lots of fun doing different hobbies. I was working during the quarantine, but during my time with them, like many of you, we're trying to find new hobbies, painting, cooking, playing card games, going outside, trying to get our exercise, but really just trying to keep busy and have fun.
Great. Thanks, Amy. And as you guys know who've been with us before, Amy is the one that was stuck holding down the fort back at the office today. Amy works at our 100 location in Middletown. Dr. Bagam and I are both out at the camp, but although it looks like we're at the same campfire, we're not. There's multiple fires here. We are at least 6 feet away. She's at least like 12 feet away from me, so we are being safe here. But Dr. Bagam also is one of our pediatricians at the 100 location in Middletown. And Samatha, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
Okay. Hi, I'm Dr. Samatha Bagam, and I've been with Crystal Run since 2012, and I've been practicing for about 11 years now. And it's been a challenging time during the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's a lot of family time. So I've been enjoying some time with my two boys, 12 and 9. And we've been reading a lot, catching up to all the activities that we want to do, some gardening. So it's been a good time to bond.
Great. All right. Well, thanks. Well, welcome to both of you. Thanks for being on today. As you guys know, if you've been with us before, I just want to spend a moment and kind of give a sort of an overview of where we are here in the Hudson Valley. And also, I forgot last week, but a belated Happy Father's Day to all of you fathers out there. I know for us, it was a chance to see our parents and my father and father-in-law, and so that was a welcome opportunity to do that safely outside. So I hope some of you got to do that as well. So it's hard to believe, but I was listening to someone this week describe it this way, and actually patient 0 in New York State was March 1st. That was the first case that came into the city, and a few days later were the first cases here in the Hudson Valley. So it's been over 3 months, almost 4 months now that we've been dealing with this issue locally. And as everyone on the phone and here in person is aware, we sort of have had a difficult time in the Hudson Valley with nearly 12,000 cases in Rockland, 11,000 in Orange County, and only actually about 1,500 up in Sullivan County. Unlike many parts of the country, we are now on the other side of kind of the real severeness and severity. And over, again, the last week, I've been reporting this out on this call, we've seen anywhere between 3 and as high as 15 new cases a day in our region, a substantial change from where we were a few months ago. And so that is certainly a reassuring thing for us. It has allowed us to move into some reopening, and we're in now phase 3 here in the Hudson Valley. And part of getting to this point has been through the hard work and safety and I think care that all of you have helped us to participate in. And we've been certainly cautiously looking for a resurgence locally as we have had things happening locally like holidays and people getting together, and that hasn't happened yet. So we're hopeful that that will continue, but really want to encourage everyone to continue to be cautious about exposures. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So that's kind of where we are. Today's a really interesting topic, I think, and one that we haven't covered yet. And that is specifically managing younger children during what is a very strange time for them. And in specifically younger children, we're really focusing on children 5 and under. And so many of you on today may have those children or have grandchildren in that age. And so I hope that you'll have some interesting things to take back and think about as we move forward. So, you know, one of the things that I think if you've been reading about this that everybody talks about is having a routine and the importance of a routine. So I just wanted to kick it off with Dr. Spoto. Amy, if you could just share with us why having a routine is important for young children and how families might go about, if they haven't already, setting up a routine for them as they kind of move through this period of cautious reopening.
Okay, sure, Dr. Nasser. Children, you know, to start out, everyone knows, or, you know, we hope that you know that children just thrive on routines. They do better when they know what's going to happen every day. A routine helps with mental health. It helps, so it reduces anxiety. It's very positive when you have a routine. Especially for younger children, it's very important that you know, you try to stick to the wake time in the morning, your normal wake time, you know, your normal bed routine. Make sure that they're you know, feeding, they're not, you know, eating all junk food. They're you know, you're trying to be healthy, getting their exercise, keeping on routine with that. And for younger children, you know, it's hard to understand a lot of this, but, you know, sometimes if you kind of get a routine where you make little charts, sometimes you have to do sticker charts or visual charts, you know, take a little picture of a clock, you know, things that you're going to do over and over again. They really do better when you kind of stick to their routine. It really helps with their mental health, their stress level during these difficult times.
Great. And Amy, what are some of, what is the one part maybe of your routine at home that you guys have really tried to stick with that you find is working for you and especially for your 3-year-old?
You know, like I said, we try to get up at the same time every day. I mean, you know, usually we try to do that even on the weekends. I know as you get older, kids like to sleep in, but during this whole time when people are just, you know, kind of, you hear a lot of people say, I never got out of my pajamas, you know, being at home, but really we tried to get up every day. We tried to get dressed, get into our regular clothes, try to eat a good breakfast, you know, do some stretching in the morning, and all those things I think kind of helped in a positive way. You know, reading, you know, especially before bed, that's a normal routine that we always have, you know, stick to that. Definitely going outside, playing, all those things just, you know, really I think helped keep the stress level under control.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think one of the challenges that I've heard about from families during this time, and it's true in my house, although my kids aren't as young as what we're talking about, is how to manage the screens not becoming the new routine, given the amount of time at home and potentially even for some parents that are having to work from home. And so, Dr. Bagam, I was just wondering if you could share maybe what you're hearing about with screens. And, you know, I think screen time is really difficult to manage any time, especially during this time. And by screens, I mean sort of video games and TV and phones and whatnot. So just wondering kind of what your advice is for families on managing screen time and video game time during this challenging time of being home more than usual.
You're right. So it is definitely very challenging because screens are more entertaining for kids and they tend to, you know, have a lot of things to do with that. But it has definitely increased compared to when, you know, before COVID-19 hit. But I think that is understandable because a lot of parents are working and they do have to maintain some kind of quiet atmosphere, and the kids are kind of left a little bit to figure out what to do with their time. So having a set time, having maybe half hour or 40 minutes, whatever it is that works out for each family because it is different, and then having a break with that. So even incorporating that as a routine. Okay, you can have screen time from this time to this time, then you have to do reading, and then, so kind of doing it that way will overall decrease the amount of screen time that they use, and also break it up so that is not their only source of entertainment.
And how would you suggest that parents explain why screen time is important to be careful about with their younger children? How can a toddler or a 4 or 5-year-old how can they talk to them about why it's not okay to be on the screen 10 or 12 hours a day?
So I think it's a little bit easier to talk with the 4 and 5-year-olds, and maybe a little bit the 3-year-olds. It's the younger kids that it's definitely challenging because you can't reason as much with them. But trying to say, okay, we still need to do some playtime. Let's play with our toys and blocks so that we learn how to do imaginative play. And I've actually kind of setting things up, because when they're seeing the same toys around the house, and they kind of lose interest in them. So getting something new out, putting it in a different location, or kind of setting up a little tea party kind of thing with the toys in there will spark their interest. So they may not always be interested, so that they'll come and start playing with it. And also when parents are there, even if you can spend 10 or 20 minutes, you can set a timer and be like, okay, we'll play together for these 10, 15 minutes. And so let's do that. And when they get involved, they tend to not be as focused on the screen time. So having the parent be involved for short periods of time throughout the day would definitely help. And also distracting them with other actual toys and all that instead of screens would definitely be helpful. Reading also can be interesting, so they can read a story and then talk about it at the end of the day. And so just to kind of keep things interesting, change it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, we're actually getting a question here that's probably worth addressing, and sort of gets into some of the behavior things too. And so it leads into one of the things we wanted to talk about, but getting a comment from one of our parents that, that she has an older child who's 8. So maybe a little bit of a different way of parenting screens, but, I think you might want to comment on that, Dr. Bagam, but that also without screens and with more downtime, that this particular child is struggling with more anxiety symptoms. So maybe sort of a 2-part thing. Can you comment on, is there anything different about how to manage screen time in sort of older children, not teenagers so much, but then also what kind of behaviors are you hearing about from parents that seem to be happening more? And that's probably a lot to cover, but maybe just start with what kind of behaviors are you hearing about more during this time, and maybe we can delve into those in a little bit more detail.
So I have a 9-year-old, so I can kind of relate to, getting them to be interested in doing other things than screen time. So, getting them to read books. I've had them do some artwork or some building things with Legos. They also maybe gardening sometimes, and, having them involved in doing some chores and watering plants. So having them do different kind of activities and having an incentive to do those things would definitely be helpful. Because there's been a big change, this is totally new. Suddenly you're not allowed to go out, you're not allowed to meet friends and grandparents and neighbors. So it has been a very big change, and kids do thrive on routine. So this is like a totally breakdown of everything. So it can be nerve-wracking. What's going to happen? Is this going to be how it's going to be for the rest of our lives? And and also with seeing how everywhere there's talk about COVID, they don't understand, how much is it affecting everyone around us? What's going to happen? And they feel like they're cut off from the rest of the world. So anxiety is very common, anger is very common, and issues with defiance. So trying to explain to them what it is, that it is temporary, and we have to do these things to be able to, for everyone to stop the transmission and get better so we can go back to how things were prior to COVID-19, I think is important to kind of explain to them. There are a lot of websites which also help with talking to kids about COVID-19. PBS Kids has a lot of information and activities for them to like do and understand with that. So I think trying to kind of explain to them why we are doing what we're doing with the social distancing would definitely be helpful.
Great. So I have a question maybe for Amy, a similar topic, but just to bring up for the younger kids, you know, that may not be able to manifest or explain that they're having anxiety. My sister called because my 3-year-old niece out of the blue started having accidents and both wetting the bed and having accidents during the day that hadn't happened in a long time. And I don't know that that was specifically related to COVID, but what are some of the behaviors that toddlers may be exhibiting that could be related to fearfulness, as Dr. Bagam pointed out, who may not be able to verbalize that they're feeling that way? And are you seeing those from parents?
Yes. So for some parents coming in, they're, you know, stating that their child definitely is having more, you know, behavior outbursts, you know, temper tantrums, you know, difficulty sleeping. You know, for a lot of kids, they've, you know, they're, like we said, they're off their a lot of kids have been off their normal routine. They're staying up later than normal, and therefore, you know, the next day they're, you know, a little bit out of sorts. They're more tired. You know, they're scared. They, you know, even in the office, we're seeing, you know, this is going to be the first, you know, when you're in the office, the first time they're seeing their parents ever in masks. So, you know, they're scared of the parents in the masks, and, you know, that is very different to them. But, you know, just a variety of behavior issues, the anxiety, the tantrums, the acting out, not sleeping well, all those things we're seeing in the office right now.
Okay. And is that something that routines can help with?
Definitely. So, like I said, try to stick to the same bedtime routine, try to make sure if they're taking, you know, naps every day, like normally kids should be doing, you know, the younger kids, the toddlers, you know, even if they're not able to nap, make sure they do have the quiet time, make sure they have screen-free time, like Dr. Bagam said. Really make sure you go outside, give them playtime outside, do some exercise, you know, play with the pets, whatever, you know, relaxing music, all those things, I think will really kind of help reduce the anxiety and the stress and what they've been going through.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to acknowledge to the parents out there that this is hard. Like it's, I think I just am reminded of, you know, it is really challenging for all of us as well. And it does require more time and parenting to do a routine where everyone is home. And, you know, I think it's worth taking a moment, you know, 3 months into this to just all be aware of that as parents. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent if your screen allotment has doubled since COVID started. But, you know, and I certainly agree from parents as well. But it is hard for all of us to move through this time and adapting. And in some ways, I think it's not a surprise that screens have gone up. But I think it's important for all of us to continue to think about setting limits and sticking to them.
Mm-hmm. And we, you know, we lose our tempers, you know, so we as parents, we have to do our best to kind of stay calm, try not to scream, try not to yell. You know, the kids are going nuts because they're off the routine. They're not, you know, in their normal, if they go to their normal sitter or daycare, you know, they're not seeing their friends. So, you know, their energy level is off the roof. And, you know, we're, you know, some parents we're at home trying to work from home. So like you said, it was very difficult for a lot of parents, and they just have to know that, you know, everybody was in the same boat, and, you know, just try to, be calm, take a deep breath. If you're, you just have to step away for a moment and, go back in a minute. And, usually the child, hopefully will be settled down, but they're going to be having tantrums, and, just let them kick and scream it out and, go back, but try to stay calm as best you can. And that'll help your child stay a little calmer too.
Great. Dr. Bagam, you mentioned PBS Kids. Are there other resources that you can point parents to that you've been recommending as far as both talking about COVID with kids and also kind of helping manage through this period of time?
So PBS Kids is good, but AAP.org also has a lot of resources on how to talk to kids about COVID. And a lot of other websites and even the major network sites have a lot of activities for kids that can help you plan things out and help with, what are safe activities that you can be doing outside, and just to kind of give you different ideas on what to do. But a lot of the news channels, the CNN, New York Times, and PBS Kids, Disney has their own, information site that can also help with having the kids talk to them about it, so they're not as fearful.
Okay, great. Another question just came in, which is, I think, a really challenging one, but see if we can help this particular parent. How can you help families or parents who have children who are afraid to go outside because of everything that's been going on? What suggestions might you have for approaching that issue?
I think that is kind of a hard question, and that I'm sure is difficult for that parent. But maybe just start slow, and if they're going to just be around the yard, or they're going to be near people that they know have been also quarantining with them, you want to start small, very small. Okay, small amounts of time, and just with family. If they're going to be with other people, make sure it's, try to have a very small group. But I think just working up maybe, 10 minutes, if there's, if there's places that are obviously more high risk, and then places that are, lower risk, going in the backyard, things like that. That's definitely something I would just start with. So I'm not sure if if they mean like out in like public places, or what exactly, if the question was talking about just going outside in the neighborhood.
Well, I think that gets to an interesting thing as well, which is, and I'm not sure which of those they were asking about, but assuming that the cases in our area are going down and that it is okay to be doing a little bit more, what are some things, and we've covered this on some past episodes, but I know we have some new folks on today. What are safe things that you can do with your children in terms of going out into the world, and what things should we continue to be cautious about?
So as far as, the more lower risk activities, going outside in your own backyard, that's probably the number one lowest risk thing. Getting some fresh air, playing outside. If you're going to be hiking, where there's not a lot of people, where you're going to be social distancing, 6 feet apart, hiking a local trail. Obviously, if it gets crowded, it's going to be a higher risk. Always, recommend bringing hand sanitizer or wipes with you if you're going to be around a little bit more people. But, tennis courts, I don't know if, golfing, those outside activities where, are not as many contacts, that would be lower risk. But as far as, the higher risk, would stay away from trampoline parks. I know there's the local trampoline park that's, had just opened and maybe opening soon. That's going to be more higher risk. Anything where there's more touching contaminated surfaces possible, like zoos, I don't think that would be a good idea just yet. And, even playgrounds, there's still, the playgrounds are opening up, but that is going to be still a little bit more risk. But, if you're going to decide to go to the playground, definitely try to do it in the early morning hours or later on when there's less people there, and bring the hand sanitizer. But, for little kids, it's difficult, and they don't want to wear, kids may not want to wear their masks, so that could be a higher transmission risk.
Yeah, Dr. Bagam, anything else to add on what's safe to do and what we should be avoiding still?
So I think being outside in very small groups, if there's any other family who's been following the same kind of quarantine rules as you have been doing, so getting together with them would be okay. Playing outside in the lawn is definitely better, but having a party is something that can increase the risk because of touching the utensils and all that. But pools are okay as long as they've been following the same rules. The water is not a source of transmission. It's not high risk. So beaches also would be okay, but maintaining that social distance is important. Going when it's not crowded would also be a good thing to do. Riding your bikes is something that is going to be fun, and they're going to be maintaining some social distance with that. So that would be something that can be done. Having the kids wear their masks, it sometimes can be challenging. Less than 2 years, it's not recommended because of suffocation. And but older kids can definitely wear it. But if they're gonna constantly keep touching their face, that is also increasing their risk. So trying to keep them more outdoors than indoors would keep them away from each other, so that there's less risk of transmission.
Okay. Yeah, since you mentioned it, what about masks? For a 2-year-old, obviously 2 and below, we're not recommending them. But for kids that are older, 3, 4, or 5 in that group, how can parents talk to kids about masks, and how can they model having them wear them? And what are some strategies that you can share about working with young children about wearing a mask where appropriate?
So for kids, this is all new, like it is to all of us. And yes, they can become very scared, nervous, anxious if they see, especially like I said before, their parents. This is the first time they're seeing them with a mask on, a lot of them. So ways to kind of help get them more or less anxious for the kids, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. Start wearing the mask around home a little bit. You can get them, if they see you wearing it, you can practice with them. Look in the mirror with them. A lot of times if they see you both in the mirror, that kind of makes them feel a little more comfortable. A lot of people have really cute masks with like Disney or characters on it. So if you're lucky enough to get one of those or know how to make them, that's great. If you don't, you can always take some stickers, some markers, just kind of make your own homemade mask with some cool designs that kids, pretend they're a superhero. That's something, I've had a lot of people do. A lot of kids have little loveys or stuffed animals. So, make a little mask and put it on their little stuffed animal. And they will also be more likely to keep it on if you're putting it on their stuffed animal. If you show them pictures of other kids that have masks on, sometimes they're, going to be more likely to keep it on as well. But those are all ways to help them kind of get more comfortable with the mask.
Dr. Bagam, I had a patient come in today with a really cool Star Wars mask. What's your favorite mask that you've seen in the office?
I've seen some really cute ones. There's a lot of them are superheroes. I had one kid have like a Spider-Man mask with a comic strip kind of thing. So that was really cool. And the kids love it. And they're being very good about, when we check their mouth, to have them pull the mask down, but without any prompting, pull it back up. So it's been really amazing how resilient and quick to adapt they are with all the changes that have been going on.
Great. We got a question, and maybe I'll just take a stab at this, but then I'll also ask you guys. So one of the questions that came in is, with social distancing, do you need to be 6 feet apart and a mask, or is it 6 feet apart and without a mask? And I think that was the nature of the question. What does social distancing mean? And one way that, and I'll throw this out and then ask you guys to add if you have any comments, but one way that I've been sort of thinking about this is that outdoors, 6 feet away, a mask is probably not necessary if you're sure that that's the case. So if you're out at a park and the nearest family is 50 feet away from you, and you're sure that the kids aren't going to suddenly run together and be with each other, you probably don't need a mask on in that situation with the best evidence that we have. But social distancing is referring to staying 6 feet away. So if there's any scenario outside where you aren't sure you can maintain 6 feet of distance for whatever reason, then the mask outside is appropriate. And then of course, if you move indoors, then the risk becomes much higher and the mask should always be worn and hopefully social distancing being maintained. That's sort of how I've been thinking about this when talking with families. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that as far as whether you need a mask outside and what that really means.
I feel it is definitely, especially as we're teaching the kids to wear masks and keep them on, it is important for them to wear masks as much as possible, especially if they are out in public places. If they're just meeting a friend who's been in the same, at their home, who's following the same rules, then it's not necessary. But if they're going to be in public places, it would be better to wear it because you just don't know how, other people are coming up, you're crossing them, you don't know what their status is. And also being outside, somebody's exercising, they're breathing harder. So I feel it would be better to wear a mask. And as long as, we are if we are not sure about how far apart they can be. But if we are more confident, okay, they can be apart from each other very well and there's no need of, constant monitoring, then I think it would be okay to not wear it, but definitely a mask when possible would be beneficial.
Okay, good.
I agree with, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Amy, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I agree with Dr. Bagam. If you are thinking about it and you're not sure which way to go, better to err on the side of being more cautious. And if you're thinking about it, it's better to just wear the mask.
So another question that came in, which is sort of akin to this, is what about socializing with toddlers? How can families do that safely, if at all? And this may be getting at some of the comments you guys mentioned earlier about, being with other families who have been following what you're doing, but any specific advice? I mean, Amy, with your 3-year-old, what are you guys doing on this issue of socializing with with children that are that young?
Well, yeah, she was she was normally in daycare, but we did decide to take her out of daycare when this all happened. But she did return to daycare. So, the way the daycares are, they're taking the temperatures and obviously they're doing the screening questionnaires. And, if anything, they're not allowed to be in the daycare. But that's a hard question. I know kids are, they don't understand, they can't get next to each other, they can't, social distance, they're constantly putting things in each other, each other's toys in each other's mouths. So, if you're confident that the other people that you're going to be socializing or playing with are, have been healthy and, following like the same rules you have, then it's probably okay. But there's really no scenario that's no risk. So if you're going to be playing with other kids, there's always a chance of some risk.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out that, what we do as pediatricians is we advise on risk. And, it certainly is, this is about modifying risk. We can't, we want to balance the absolutely no risk, which is never leaving the house, versus the highest risk and trying to figure out a way for us to do that safely. And of course, that also depends on the cases that are going on locally. Okay, I think we've answered all of our questions that came in and we've covered most of the topics that we wanted to do. What I'd like to just finish up with for you both is we can start this time with Dr. Bagam. What is, just in general, not specifically on this topic, but what is your best advice for families about maintaining their sort of wellness during this time, both physical and behavioral and mental wellness for all of us. What is your best advice to sort of maintain that as we continue to move forward here?
I think it's very important that we set up realistic goals and be like, okay, they need to be outside, they need to have some physical activity, they have to have good sleep routine. So those two things are very important. Having some downtime is also important, where they can do like unsupervised play. With everyone being in quarantine, the families are like 24/7 on top of each other. So there sometimes can be a lot of friction. Having each family member having some alone time would definitely be beneficial, so that there's the kids learn how to start learning to do independent play, and also the parents and older siblings can have some downtime where they can also have structured time and do what it is that they want to do. So those things are definitely very important for the mental health, and we really need to take the time to do that. And if there's any kind of frustration that seems to be building up, trying to discuss about it is very important. But having them outside is, I think, the best thing to do, so that they can get some fresh air and light, and have them do some gardening if possible will help them to kind of burn their energy down too.
Okay, great. I apologize. There was one other question that I missed that I just will comment briefly and then turn back to Dr. Spoto. So it was a question about camps and whether it's okay to go to camps, and there are some locally that are opening. So we actually talked about camps last week, and just briefly, number one, you can certainly go back and listen to last week's episode, but regarding the camps, what we discussed last time, just to recap, was that the camps are opening. They have fairly strict safety requirements from the state, and you can actually see those if you go to the New York State website, the New York Forward website, all the criteria for camps. And what we had recommended and concluded for families from last week is that if you're considering a camp, and it could be a sports camp or a day camp, that we would really encourage you to speak to the camp about how they're planning to implement the safety precautions that the state is recommending, which include distancing and in particular. And then the last thing to just mention is that sports are also being reopened, and some sports are being allowed now, and some aren't, based on their risk. For example, in the next wave of sports includes things like soccer and baseball, and golf has been going for a while, but for all of those, especially with the camps, that the camps are expected to have safety precautions in place in order for them to reopen. And so we would encourage you to speak to the camp that you're considering, and also with your kids, as to whether or not the reason for going to camp would still add value to them. Is it going to be fun? Are you going for improvement in sports skills? Are you going because you need an option while you're working? And so I think if you reach out to those camps individually and think about why you're going to camp, it can help you to figure out if this is something that you'd like to do. So that was a recap in a nutshell of last week, but that's available on our website and on our Facebook page if you want to go back and take a listen. So sorry, I missed that question, but Dr. Spoto, back to you. So what is your best advice for families during this time in terms of maintaining wellness in their homes?
Oh, I think Dr. Bagam did an excellent job of answering that question. Everything she said, I agree with, and I don't have too much more to add other than what she said, other than, try to eat healthy, try to make sure you're hydrating, drink your water, keep the kids away from the sodas, the juices, anything that's got a lot of sugar in it that's gonna not be as good for them. And really, like she said, go outside, take a break, get your exercise, go for a bike ride, a walk, play in the backyard, play with your dogs, your pets, and just stay active. And as she said, a little relaxation time for every family member, a little downtime, just to help kind of relax, reduce the tension, reduce the stress in these difficult times, and do your best to enjoy the family time that you have.
Great. I did hear that dogs are the happiest creatures regarding the shelter at home. They've never had more time with their families. And
That's true.
I'm more of a dog person. Apparently cats, not so happy. But you'll see my bias there in that comment. So
I
great.
have
Well,
dogs too.
really appreciate you guys both joining us today. Just in closing, I want to thank everyone for participating. We're back again next week. Next week, we're planning to talk about specifically some safety issues around both coming into our office, but also to other public places, and a special 4th of July safety message as well in terms of thinking about things that you might be doing. And just in closing for me, I again want to just encourage families to also acknowledge how difficult this time has been. The parenting is always hard, but really, really, really hard during this time. Give yourselves a break. It would be wonderful if all of us during this time wrote a novel, ran a marathon, suddenly became, the sort of the achieved all of the goals that we had on our bucket list. And that's just not realistic. And I think just being aware of how far we've come, we've all made progress, and take some time for ourselves to kind of think about that at this point now, 4 months into this whole crisis. But encourage everyone to continue to stay safe, spend time with their family, and most importantly though, if you have a specific question about your child, it's difficult for us to cover that here, but we're here. Call your pediatrician, Dr. Bagam, Dr. Spoto. We'd love to hear from you. All of us are doing telehealth visits as well, which many of these questions lend themselves to. So reach out to your pediatrician if you have specific questions about your child. And thank you again for being here, and hope everyone has a great evening. Take advantage of the long days and get outside tonight with your kids. Thanks so much. And thanks, Dr. Spoto and Dr. Bagam.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Be safe.